Are you looking for inspiration for your next knitting project? In this video I have gathered together 57 free knitting patterns, from socks to sweaters, cardigans, tees, and even some very simple projects that are perfect if you are either a beginner knitter or are looking for a more mindless, relaxing knit. I've actually shared these patterns before in separate videos, but now I've put them together all in one place so that you can have a huge library of knitting pattern inspiration without having to click around. So make yourself a cup of tea or coffee, grab your knitting, and let's get cozy together while we explore all of these beautiful and free knitting patterns. Let's start with the first knitting pattern, and it's also the one that I'm wearing today. This is the Saturday Shrug by Jackie Rose, and it has been published in December of 2023. Now this is an extremely versatile pattern because you can knit it with any yarn weight and also with as little or as many different colors as you like. All you have to know in order to create this one is how to cast on, bind off, knit and purl, and you are good to go. So the sample in the pattern photos was knitted with a worsted weight yarn held together with a lace weight yarn in order to create a bulky weight yarn with a gauge of 18 stitches over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used was a US 9 or a 5.5 millimeter needle. But if you want to use a different yarn, you simply have to make a gauge swatch and adapt the number of stitches you cast on for your own gauge. So the whole piece is knitted in 1x1 rib, and you can either make thicker stripes like I did, or thinner stripes, or maybe even only use one solid color. So the version that I made is knitted with Plötulopi by Istex, which is an unspun yarn, and I used the white color together with this light gray, which is called Ash Heather, to create this striped version. I used two different needles. I used a US 7 and a US 8, which correspond to a 4.5 and a 5 millimeter needle, because I wanted my shrug to taper in a little bit towards the neck. But if I were to knit this pattern again, I think I would make it taper in even more, because I ideally would like to have a tighter fit around the neck. It is quite loose. And I also have to say that I'm not completely happy with my yarn choice here. It was my first knitting project with unspun yarn, and I think it was a great one for that. I held the yarn double to give it a bit more stability. But Plötulopi is a very rustic yarn, so it is just a tad too scratchy for my liking to have it around the neck area. So I'm thinking about reknitting this pattern because I think it's an awesome pattern, but this time choosing something that's just a little bit softer. Let's have a look at another neck piece, and I wanted to show you this pattern called the Triangle Stripe Garter Wrap by Pearl Soho. This was published in November of 2021, and it uses Pearl Soho's own yarn. They use the Good Wool, which is a sport weight yarn, and it requires 4 skeins of that with a gauge of 22 stitches and 44 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 6 or a 4 millimeter needle. The pattern is written to be knitted with 3 different colors, so you will use 2 skeins of the main color and 1 skein of each of the contrast colors. But of course that's completely adaptable and you can modify it to your own liking. So when it comes to the difficulty of this pattern, it's also an easy pattern, of course, but I would say it is one step up from the Saturday Shrug, because in addition to the skills you need for the Saturday Shrug, you will also have to be able to make increases when it comes to the triangle garter wrap. You do this by knitting front and back, and you also have to know how to slip stitches. But overall, completely doable, and I love that this is just a huge cozy triangle wrap, and I would love to knit this one. Let's have a look at some hat knitting patterns now, and one that I wanted to show you is called the Vima Beanie by Vera Välimäki. It was published in December of 2021, and it is knitted with a super bulky yarn, which means that it knits up super quickly. The gauge is 14 stitches and 18 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And the needle size used is a US 11, which corresponds to an 8 millimeter needle. So this is a simple ribbed beanie that is knitted from the brim up, and it comes in 2 different sizes. And since this pattern uses such a thick yarn, I think this would also make an awesome gift knit, because it would not only knit up very quickly, but since it is an all over ribbing, I think it would fit a number of different head circumferences really well. Next up is the Holly hat by Claudia Quintanilla from Unit Toronto. This was published in December of 2020 and is knitted with the Sandnes Garn Sunday, which is a fingering weight yarn held together with a silk mohair. This comes out to a gauge of 22 stitches and 29 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And the needle size used is a US 6, which corresponds to 4 millimeters. This hat pattern also comes in 2 sizes, and it features this folded up brim, which is ribbed, and the rest of the hat is knitted in stockinette stitch. Let's move on to sweaters now, and there are 3 different sweater construction designs that I would like to show you. The first one is called Brick, and it is a pattern by Claire Lee. This is done with a raglan construction, and the yarn that she used to knit this is the Brooklyn Tweed Shelter, which is a worsted weight yarn with a gauge of 18 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 7 and a US 9, which correspond to a 4.5 and a 5.5 millimeter needle. The design comes in 7 different sizes. There is unfortunately no information about the finished bust measurements or the recommended ease on the Ravelry project page, but I downloaded the pattern and checked, and the finished bust measurements are 29 up to 53 inches or 74 up to 135 centimeters. The skills that you need to have in order to knit this sweater is that you, of course, will have to know how to cast on and bind off, and also how to knit and purl. And in addition, you will have to know how to do increases, and the increases here are done by the knit front and back stitch. And you also have to know how to decrease, and in this sweater construction or this knitting pattern, it is done by knit 2 together and the slip slip knit stitch. And in addition, you will also have to know how to do the backwards loop cast on. So this is a very simple basic pullover design that is knitted from the top down. And if you knit a garment from the top down, that's always great, because you can try on the sweater as you go and adapt along the way if needed. And the raglan shaping means that you have 4 increase points around the yoke, so 2 at the front and 2 at the back, where you do the increases, and this creates a very specific look of those raglan lines. Another great thing about this pattern is that it comes with optional waist shaping, so you can either decide to go for the waist shaping, which would mean that you would have to first decrease and then increase on the body, or you can omit the waist shaping and just knit straight down. And I always love it when patterns come with different options like these, because it really makes it so adaptable, so that you can truly knit a sweater that fits exactly how you want it to fit. The next sweater knitting pattern that I would like to show you is called Molly, and it is a design by Lolita Duby, and this one has a circular yoke construction. It has been published in September of 2022 and is knitted with a fingering yarn held together with a silk mohair, which comes out to a gauge of 22 stitches and 30 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 5 and a US 6, which correspond to 3.75 and 4 millimeter needles. The design comes in 15 different sizes, with finished bust measurements ranging from 31.5 up to 59 inches or 80 up to 150 inches. The recommended positive ease is 2 to 4 inches or 5 to 10 centimeters. So this sweater knitting pattern is also knitted from the top down, but contrary to the brick sweater that we just had a look at with the raglan construction, this one has a circular yoke construction, which means that you do symmetric increases all throughout the yoke. instead of those 4 raglan points that we just saw in the brick sweater. So in order to knit this sweater, you will have to have all of the skills that you would need for the brick sweater, and in addition you also have to work short rows in order to shape the neck. So short rows are usually included directly at the neck part, so this means that you knit back and forth instead of in the round, and this brings the front down a little bit and it just makes the sweater sit a little bit nicer. It's not difficult, and this knitting pattern even comes with video tutorials for all of the techniques, which I think is awesome. So I think this would be a great sweater if you have never knitted a sweater before. And the third sweater knitting pattern that we are going to have a look at is called Nestoria, and it is a design by Audrey Borrego. So this is a drop shoulder design, which means that the shoulder line falls off over the shoulders and creates this very specific drop shoulder look. This design was published in December of 2021 and is knitted with an Aran weight yarn, so it will probably knit up super quickly. The gauge is 20 stitches and 25 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 4 and a US 6, which correspond to a 3.5 and a 4 millimeter needle. The design comes in 9 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 90 up to 170 centimeters or 35.5 up to 67 inches. The recommended ease is 20 centimeters, which corresponds to 7 3/4 inches. So this sweater is also knitted from the top down and has some special twisted rib details. It starts with the shoulders that are shaped with German short rows, and then the upper body is worked flat with a round neck shaping. The body is then joined in the round and worked towards the hem. The sleeves are picked up around the armholes and then worked in the round while you steadily decrease to taper them until the cuffs. And in the end, the collar is picked up around the neckline and worked as a wide mock turtleneck. So this knitting pattern also comes with links to video tutorials that explain the different techniques. So I think this would make another great first sweater if you have never knitted a sweater before. So those are sweaters with 3 totally different constructions. We had the raglan sweater, the circular yoke one, and now the drop shoulder. Which one is your personal favorite? Please leave a comment, I would love to know. Personally, I currently really like the raglan sweaters and also the drop shoulder designs. Circular yoke sweaters don't seem to fit me as well. I don't really know what it is. Maybe it's just my body type, or maybe I just haven't found the right pattern yet. I'm not sure, but I definitely prefer drop shoulder and raglan at the moment. Anyway, let's move on to the next pattern. So the next pattern that we're going to look at is the step-by-step cardigan by Florence Miller. And this was published in April of 2024, and it comes with a full YouTube video tutorial, which I think is just awesome. It is knitted with a worsted weight yarn with a gauge of 16 stitches and 21 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 6, 7 and 9, which corresponds to a 4, 4.5 and 5.5 millimeter needle. The design comes in 9 different sizes. The finished bust measurements range from 29.5 up to 61 inches, which corresponds to 75 up to 155 centimeters. The recommended ease is 6 inches or 15 centimeters of positive ease. So this one is knitted in one piece from the top down, but since it is a cardigan, you have to knit it flat. The cardigan has a raglan construction and the body is done in stockinette stitch, and the bottom hem and the sleeve cuffs are done in 1x1 ribbing. Like I said, there is a full video tutorial that comes with this pattern, and what I also really like is that you can get this pattern for free, but it is more of a pay what you like model. So you could either get it for free, pay the full price, or only pay half the price, which I think is just an awesome idea by Florence. I'm going to link the video tutorial in the description box in case you would like to check it out. Next up is a pattern that is on my personal to knit list for this year, and it is the Tweedy Shrug by Beata Jacek from Hedgehog Fibers. This one came out in January of 2022, And it is knitted, of course, with hedgehog fiber yarns. She used the DK weight yarn called the Hedgehog Fibers 3D yarn with a gauge of 20 stitches and 32 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 6, which corresponds to 4 millimeter needle. And it comes in 4 double sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 28 up to 62 inches or 71 up to 157.5 centimeters. There isn't any specific information about the recommended ease. It simply states that you should have lots of positive ease. The shrug has a broken rib for the neckband and also the bottom hem. And broken rib simply means that you knit one row and then do knit one, purl one, alternating all throughout the next row. This piece is knitted from the top down and it's knit flat because it is a cardigan, and then the sleeves are knitted in the round. I think this is a very beautiful and versatile piece that I would love to knit this year, and I even already got the yarn for it. I'm going to put it on the screen for you. I am going to use the Camarose by Snevnook in this beautiful dusty shade of pink, and I'm really looking forward to knitting this project. Next up, let's talk about a sock knitting pattern, and the one that I wanted to show you first is called the Favorite Socks by Kristen Lehrer from Woolen Wine. So this was published in November of 2014 and also comes with a full video tutorial here on YouTube. I'm going to link it for you. And since Kristen is the dyer behind Woolen Wine yarns, she of course also used one of her own sock yarn bases. She used a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 32 stitches and 46 rounds over 10 centimeters or 4 inches, and a needle size of a US 1.5, which corresponds to a 2.5 millimeter needle. This design comes in 3 different sizes. So this is a very simple all over stockinette sock that is knitted from the cuff down with a classic heel flap and gusset construction and a ribbed cuff. And I think this would make an awesome first sock if you have never knitted socks before, especially since it comes with a full video tutorial, which, like I said, I'm going to link for you. Another sock knitting pattern as an alternative option if you would like to have a bit more of a texture pattern is called the Austin Socks by Kay Litton from the Crazy Sock Lady Designs. Kay Litton has a number of different knitting patterns available on Ravelry, mostly socks, but she also has a couple of accessory patterns. She designed the Austin Socks in February of 2017. And she knitted them in a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 28 stitches over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle that she used is a US 1, which corresponds to a 2.25 millimeter needle. This pattern comes in 3 different sizes, and it is also knitted from the cuff down with a classic heel flap and gusset construction and has a rounded toe. The name Austin Socks comes from her son, who is named Austin, and he helped her design this textured stitch pattern, which is simply done by alternating between knitting and purling. So I think this would make a great beginner sock knitting pattern as well. The next pattern that I wanted to show you is simply called the Fingerless Mittens by Iris H. It was published in March of 2024 and is knitted with a DK weight yarn with a gauge of 22 stitches and 30 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 4, which corresponds to a 3.5 millimeter needle, and it comes in 6 different sizes. Now she states on the Ravelry page that this design has not been test knitted, but that you should get back to her and report any errors if you come across them. But overall, I think this would still make a very beginner-friendly mitten pattern because you simply knit in the round. You start at the cuff and then knit your way up, and all you have to do is shape the little thumb gusset, which you do by increases. So I think this would be an awesome free mitten pattern for you to try. Next up, let's look at this hot water bottle cover, and it is called All You Need, a Classic by London Leo. This design was published in June of 2011, and it was knitted with a DK weight yarn with a gauge of 20 stitches and 30 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The pattern comes with directions for both a DK and an Aran weight yarn, and the needle sizes used are a US 8 or 5 millimeter needle, and a US 6 or 4mm needle. So one is used for the Aran weight yarn and the other one for the DK weight yarn. It is only a one size pattern with a width of 20 centimeters or 8 inches and a height of 33 centimeters and 13 inches. And this one is knitted from the bottom up in the round, so in one piece, and has this ribbed collar. And you do this simply by knitting stockinette stitch all over. It states that the pattern can easily adjust it to any gauge, as well as being knitted top down or flat if you prefer this. I would love to knit a hot water bottle cover myself this year, because I have this hot water bottle that does not have a cover yet. So I might give this pattern a try and then report back to you. Next up, let's have a look at this beautiful tee pattern, which is called the Perfect Knit T-shirt by Caitlin Barthold from Originally Lovely. It was published in May of 2021 and is knitted with a DK weight yarn. The gauge is 22 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And the needle size used is a US 6, which corresponds to 4mm needles. The design comes in 9 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 32 up to 64 inches or 81 up to 162.5 centimeters. It is recommended to be worn with 0 to 4 inches or 0 to 10 centimeters of positive ease. And this is a very simple classic top with a shaped neckline and a slightly relaxed fit and a raglan shaping that is worked from the top down. So after the first few rounds that are worked flat to shape the front neckline, the shirt is worked in the round. There are different options to get this knitting pattern. You could either get it for free on Caitlin Barthold's website, but you would have to deal with the ads there, or you could purchase a kit along with the pattern, and then you would get the pattern for free if you buy the Lion brand Kobu, which is a blend of cotton and rayon. And you could do this on the Lion brand website. I'm going to link it for you in the description box. And the third option would be to simply purchase the pattern on Ravelry if you would like to simply get the pattern without anything else. And let's have a look at another summer piece, this time a top called the Bliss Tank by Alicia Plummer. This one came out in August of 2024 and is knitted with a sport weight yarn with a gauge of 16 stitches and 24 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle she used is a US 9, which corresponds to a 5.5mm needle. This design comes in 17 different sizes, so it's very size inclusive, with finished bust measurements ranging from 31 up to 69.5 inches or 78.5 up to 176.5 centimeters. It is recommended to be worn with 1 to 3 inches of negative ease, which corresponds to 2.5 to 7.5 centimeters of negative ease. The tank is knitted flat, so you knit the front and the back and then join at the shoulders with a 3-needle bind off and then seam the sides. The neckline and the optional armhole finishing are picked up and then knit in the round. The body is shaped with a subtle A-line to skim the hips gently while also not creating too much fabric for tucking. I always really like it when designers include certain notes on the Ravelry page, and Alicia Plummer did it for this one as well, and I wanted to read it to you. She says, "This tank is a way for me to give back to you, my friends, the community I didn't know I needed. Thank you. I am so overwhelmed with how this art has connected me with people I truly cannot imagine my life without. I am so thankful for you." And she states that she also created this pattern in order to spread awareness about the Size Inclusive Collective. That's a resource for people with all kinds of different sizes to help promote grading advocacy in the industry so that every body type, no matter how it looks, can have access to well-written and great-fitting patterns. The first pattern that I want to show you is the Sjöboot sweater by Sigrid Marie Blom. It was published in February of 2024, and the yarn that was used is from the Swedish company Järbö, who also published the pattern. The yarn that was used is a 100% wool sport weight yarn with a gauge of 20 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 2.5 and a US 4 and a US 6, which corresponds to a 3 millimeter, a 3.5 millimeter, and a 4 millimeter needle. The pattern comes in 8 different sizes with a recommended ease of 20 to 25 centimeters or 8 to 9 3/4 inches. And the finished garment measurements around the bust range from 41 up to 66.5 inches or 104 up to 169 centimeters. The sweater is worked from the top down, beginning with an invisible cast on at one of the shoulders. Then the back, shoulders, neckline, and front are worked back and forth with increases and decreases for the shaping. Next, the body is worked from the top down, like I mentioned, with this colorwork stripe pattern. And at the bottom hem, you have a ribbing edge. And finally, you knit the neckband and fold it down and invisibly sew it down on the wrong side. I think this is a very beautiful design. It looks contemporary to me while also being classic, and this is one I would absolutely love to make in the future. Next up is the Huldra pullover, which is actually a vest, and this is a design by Inga Semmingsen, which was also published by the Swedish yarn company Järbo, this time knitted with an Aran weight yarn. The design came out in December of 2023. And the gauge is 17 stitches and 22 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a 4.5 and a 5.5 millimeter needle, which corresponds to a US 7 and a US 9. There are again 8 sizes available with a finished bust measurement of the garment ranging from 32.25 up to 59 inches or 82 up to 150 centimeters. Unfortunately, with this design, there is no information about the recommended ease. The vest is knitted from the top down and features both ribbing and stockinette. You first cast on for the neck and work the ribbing at the same time as increasing for the sleeves. There are short rows added on the back neck for shaping, and you divide the back and the front while shaping the underarms and then join again in the round and knit down. Another very beautiful design, and I think with this Aran weight yarn it would also knit up rather quickly. Next up is a gorgeous all over colorwork design by Marie Wallin, which is called Lab Wing. It was published in July of 2018 and is knitted in a fingering weight yarn from the Grey Sheep company. And the yarn base is called Hampshire 4-ply. The gauge is 32 stitches and 29 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. So I imagine this would take some time to knit up. And the needle sizes used are a US 2 and a US 3, which corresponds to a 2.75 and a 3.25 millimeter needle. The design comes in 5 different sizes, and although there is no information about the finished bust measurements of the garment, it states in the pattern that the smallest size is intended to fit a bust ranging from 81 to 86 centimeters, which corresponds to 32 up to 34 inches. And the largest size is going to fit a bust size of 122 up to 127 centimeters, which corresponds to 48 to 50 inches. This is a semi-fitted sweater with 3/4 length sleeves, and it is stated in the pattern that the color work is easy to knit and that this design would be a good first Fair Isle garment to knit, which is great to know. It is knitted flat in pieces, however, and this means that you will not only have to work with 2 different colors at a time on the right side, but also on the wrong side. So you would have to purl the color work, which can be a bit challenging. Since the garment is knitted in pieces, this also means that you have to seam up the pieces in the end to create the finished garment. But this is such a beautiful design that I think it would be definitely worth giving it a try, especially since this is a completely free pattern. Next up is the Scheer pullover Women by the West Strand Sisters. This is another design that was published by the Swedish yarn company Järbo, again with the Aran weight yarn that was also used for the, the Huldra vest. The design came out in November of 2022 and has a gauge of 18 stitches and 30 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 4 and a US 6, which correspond to a 3.5 and a 4 millimeter needle. You are also going to need a hook to make this design because there is a provisional cast on in the pattern. The design comes in 8 different sizes with a positive ease of 13 centimeters or 5¼ inches. And the sweater chest measurements range from 36¾ inches up to 63 inches or 93.5 centimeters up to 160 centimeters. The sweater is worked from the top down in the round, so in one piece, and includes short rows to lengthen the back so that it is extra cozy, which you can see on the picture here. It has a contrast color inside the double neckband and also on the cuffs and the lower edge, which I think looks very beautiful. And in case you like this particular pattern, there is also a men's version as well as a mitten pattern available, both also for free. Next up is another beautiful all-over colorwork design, and it is the Saga cardigan by Venture Rolled. This one was published in August of 2021, again by the Swedish yarn company Järbo, and uses a sport weight yarn with a gauge of 22 stitches and 27 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 2.5 and a US 6, which correspond to 3 millimeter and 4 millimeter needles. The design comes in 9 different sizes. Unfortunately, there is no information about the ease that is recommended, but the final bust measurements from the garment range from 33½ inches up to 61¼ inches or 85 up to 155.5 centimeters. It is stated in the pattern that the stranded colorwork is easy to knit because there are only short floats. But if you do decide to make this design, you also have to know how to crochet because all of the edges are finished with crochet in a contrast color. The cardigan is worked in the round from the top down with a yoke and is later on steeked in order to become a cardigan. So this could also be an interesting first steeking project, I think. The yoke is shaped with increases and then you split for the body and the sleeves and work each sleeve and the body separately. And at the end you cut up the steek in the center front and at the front bands. Next up is the Barley Field cardigan by Jojo Knitwear. This just came out in September of 2024 and was published by the yarn company Hobbii. And that's also why the suggested yarns are both from Hobbii. They recommend holding the Hobbii Divina, which is an alpaca, nylon and wool blend, together with the Hobbii Soft Alpaca, which is a 100% alpaca lace weight yarn. So both of these yarns held together create a worsted weight gauge, no, not a worsted, a bulky weight gauge with 15 stitches and 26 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needles used are a US 8 and a US 9, which correspond to 5 millimeter and 5.5 millimeter needles. The pattern comes in 6 different sizes and the finished bust measurements range from 85 to 90 up to 120 to 130 centimeters or 33.5 to 35.4 up to 47.2 to 51.2 inches. There is no information in the pattern about the recommended ease. The design is worked flat from the top down. You have those raglan sleeves and a beautiful lace pattern on the front piece. The rest of the cardigan is worked in plain stockinette stitch. and the lace pattern only comes in a charted version. So if you want to make this pattern, you have to be able to read charts, and this beautiful design also comes as a sweater version, which is also available for free. So this might also something to consider. Next up is the ballerina wrap top, a beautiful pattern by Alexandra Tavel from Two of Wands. Now this pattern comes in both a short sleeve and a long sleeve version, and the short sleeve version is available for free on her blog. But if you want to get the pattern from the blog, you will have to deal with the ads there, or you could also opt for purchasing the pattern. If you want to make the long sleeve version but want to use the free pattern, I assume it would be quite simple to figure out how to go from the short sleeve version to the long sleeve version by just lengthening the sleeves and doing a couple of decreases. The pattern was published in February of 2024 and uses the Sorella yarn in the classic DK base. The gauge is 20 stitches and 27 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches, and the needle size used is a US 6, which corresponds to a 4mm needle. The pattern comes in 9 different sizes with a suggested negative ease of 0 to 2 inches or 0 to 5 centimeters. The bust circumference when the cardigan is fully wrapped ranges from 28 to 60 inches or 71 to 152.5 centimeters. And I also wanted to read the pattern description to you, which is on the Ravelry project page, because I think it is very fitting for this design. It says, add a trendy feminine touch to your wardrobe this fall with the ballerina wrap top. This cropped cutie pairs perfectly with high-waisted jeans or sailor pants and looks stunning on its own or atop a camisole. This sweater top moves from day to night effortlessly and also looks lovely and elegant with a pencil skirt and bandana scarf. I think this is a stunning design, and I would absolutely love to make some kind of ballerina wrap top in the near future. So we'll see if I do decide to make this one or maybe a similar version. Next up is another stunning design, this time a very classic sweater called La Rentrée by Sonderjanko. This one just came out in September of 2024, and since it is published by Melissa Clulo from Sonderjanko, it is also knitted in their yarns. She used 2 strands of their silk mohair base, which is called Halo Held Together. And this comes out to a DK weight yarn with a gauge of 19 stitches and 25 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 6 and a US 7, which corresponds to a 4mm and a 4.5mm needle. The design comes in 10 different sizes, ranging from 41.25 inches up to 72 inches or 105 up to 183 centimeters. So this is designed to be worn with quite a lot of positive ease. The recommended positive ease is 6 to 10 inches or 15 to 25.5 centimeters. And with this design, there's also a description on the Ravelry project page that I wanted to read to you. It says, La rentrée marks the return to school, work, and the rhythm of daily life. A time to leave behind the ease of summer and embrace the crisp, energizing promise of fall. This sweater pattern embodies this transition beautifully. The light, cozy fabric offers effortless warmth, while the folded neckline adds a touch of comfort. Breezy statement sleeves balance relaxed elegance with structure, accentuated by ribbed details. It's the perfect blend of summer's laid-back energy and the renewed focus on fall routines. Now this is a design I would definitely love to make in the future. I think it is classic but also basic, and I'm sure I would get a ton of wear out of a sweater like this one. Next up is another cardigan, and it is the Folklore cardigan by Lion Brand. Now this one is of course also worked with Lion Brand yarn. They recommend the Ease Solids Heathers Twists yarn, which is an Aran weight yarn and is a blend of acrylic and wool. This design came out in January of 2020 and has a gauge of 16 stitches and 22 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 9, which corresponds to a 5.5 millimeter needle. The design comes in only 3 different sizes, unfortunately, ranging from 45 up to 60 inches or 114.5 up to 152.5 centimeters. It is knitted in pieces and later on seamed together, and features this beautiful cable pattern and those contrasting button bands and cuffs, which I think make a very stunning design. Next up is another classic sweater, this time with stripes, and it is the Hokkaido sweater by Sitzel Grau. This one was published in March of 2021, and the yarn that was used is the Hjelholz Ullspinnery Handwerks yarn. I hope that's right. It is an Aran weight yarn with a gauge of 17 stitches and 22 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And the needle size used is a US 8, which corresponds to a 5 millimeter needle. This design comes in 6 different sizes, ranging from 100 to 150 centimeters or 40 to 60 inches. And it is recommended to have quite a lot of positive ease, 15 to 17 centimeters or 6 to 7 inches. The design is worked from the top down in all over stockinette stitch. Now on the Ravelry project page, it says that this design has kind of a saddle shoulder that is placed on the back rather than on the shoulder, which makes it almost invisible from the front. And the neck, bottom hem and sleeve cuffs feature this extra long ribbing, which I think looks very nice and elegant together with these stripes, and this is another pattern that I would love to make in the future. Next up is another cable design, and this is the Honeycomb Aran by Gail Bunn. It was published in September of 2014, and the yarn used is the Patons North America Classic Wool Worsted, which is a 100% wool yarn. This is a worsted weight yarn with a gauge of 19 stitches and 25 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And the needles used are a US 6 and a US 8, which correspond to a 4 millimeter and a 5 millimeter needle. The design comes in 6 different sizes, ranging from 40 to 62 inches or 101.5 up to 157.5 centimeters. It is knitted in pieces and then seamed and is an all-over cable design. So I imagine it would be a more elaborate knit, but very classic and very beautiful. Next up is the Kiuru sweater by Ronja Hakaleto. This one was published in different magazines. It was featured both in the Burda magazine and also in Novita. And it first came out in July of 2021. It is a classic yoke construction featuring this colorwork on the yoke. And the suggested yarn is the Novita Natural Collection Icelandic Wool, which is an Aran weight yarn with a gauge of 18 stitches and 24 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 6 and a US 7, which corresponds to a 4 millimeter and a 4.5 millimeter needle. The design comes in 6 different sizes, ranging from a body circumference of 88 to 128 centimeters or 34 3/4 up to 50.5 inches. There is no information about the positive ease that's recommended. And like I said, this is a classic colorwork yoke construction that is knitted from the top down in one piece. Next up is the J sweater by Rachel Brockman, and it came out in July of 2019. The suggested yarn is the Fibra Natura Kingston Tweed, which is a blend of wool, alpaca and rayon, and it is a DK weight yarn with a gauge of 23 stitches and 30 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 5, 6 and 7, which correspond to a 3.75, a 4 and a 4.5 millimeter needle. The design comes in 9 different sizes with finished bust circumferences ranging from 33.5 up to 65.5 inches, or 85 up to 166 centimeters. The sweater is worked seamlessly in the round from the top down, and the neckline and sleeve cuffs are worked in a contrasting color. Now, on the Ravelry project page, there is a statement by the designer about the inspiration for this design that I wanted to read to you. It says, "Named after forest-dwelling jays, this slightly cropped sweater subtly nods to the patterning on their plumage. From scrub jays to blue jays, I've always admired the confidence and curiosity of these beautiful birds. Perfect for those curious knitters seeking to boost their colorwork confidence, this straightforward pullover would be a great first yoked sweater." Next up is another beautiful cardigan design, and it is the Sommer Koftan 2023 by Maja Karlsson. It was published in June of 2023, again by the Swedish yarn company Järbo, and uses their sport weight yarn. The gauge is 25 stitches and 30 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches, and it is knitted with a US 2.5 or a 3mm needle. The cardigan comes in 8 different sizes, with final garment chest measurements ranging from 34.25 up to 59.75 inches, or 87 up to 152 centimeters. The cardigan is knitted from the bottom up and in one piece, and it is cropped and features this beautiful colorwork panel, which is framed by a decorative lace pattern. If you are interested in making this design, you should definitely have a look at Ravelry, because there are a number of very different but all very beautiful versions there to get inspired by. Next up is another sweater pattern that I wanted to show you, and it is the Galia sweater by Camille K. This one was published in August of 2024, again by the yarn company Hobbii. And the sample was, of course, also knitted with Hobbii yarn, this time with their Friends Kit silk, which is a blend of mohair, silk, and wool. 2 strands are held together in this design to create a DK weight gauge of 20 stitches and 29 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 4, 6, and 7, which correspond to a 3.5, 4, and 4.5mm needle. The design comes in 6 different sizes, with finished bust circumferences ranging from 96 up to 142 centimeters, or 37.75 up to 56 inches. The sweater is designed to be worn with quite a lot of positive ease. It's 10 to 20 centimeters or 4 to 8 inches. What I really like about this design is the balloon sleeves that feature this beautiful lace motif. And besides that, it is a drop shoulder construction, and it is knitted from the top down. If you're anything like me, you've probably downloaded your fair share of sock knitting patterns, some more inspiring than others. So in today's video, I am sharing 15 truly lovely designs with you. They are all very charming, cute, and best of all, free. So whether you're in the mood for some whimsical woodland designs or some elegant lace, I am certain that there is going to be something that speaks to you. Let's get started. I will include links to every pattern that I talk about in the description box below, together with a link for a bundle that I put together on Ravelry that contains more than 40 free sock knitting patterns. And the first pattern that I would like to show you is called the Nutmeg Socks by Tanya Bali. This design was published in February of 2022 and is knitted with a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 34 stitches and 46 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 0, which corresponds to 2 millimeters, and it comes in 3 different sizes. This pattern is knitted from the cuff down. It features a simple but engaging texture stitch pattern on the leg and the foot, and a slip stitch heel flap and gusset. And I also really like this cable detail in the ribbing. The next pattern that I would like to show you is called I'm So Basic Socks by Summer Lee, and this one came out in August of 2022. It is knitted with a light fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 40 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 1, which corresponds to a 2.25 millimeter needle, and it comes in 4 different sizes. This sock knitting pattern is perfect for beginners. It's an all-over stockinette pattern, so there are no complicated stitches involved. And in addition, the pattern is very detailed and walks you through everything step by step. And there are even links to video tutorials included in the pattern. I am working on a pair of I'm So Basic socks myself right now, and this is how far I have gotten on the first sock. So the yarn that I am using is Mondim by Retrosaria Rosa Pomar, and I purchased this as the undyed colorway. I think it's called 100, and then naturally dyed it myself using logwood, cochineal and oak galls. The technique that I used here is something that I call my inverse speckling technique, and I absolutely love the way the sock is turning out, as you can see here. So this inverse speckling technique is a technique that I developed myself, and it is part of an online course that I am currently putting the finishing touches on. If this is something that interests you, I can highly recommend that you give dyeing yarn with natural dyes a try. It is so much fun and very enjoyable. I'm going to put the link to the waitlist for my online course in the description box below as well, so you can sign up and then will be the first to know once the course becomes available, and you'll also be eligible for the introductory price. Back to the pattern. I do have to say I enjoy this pattern quite a lot. It is very simple to do and just a joy to knit. The next pattern that I have picked out to show you is called the Daisy Socks by Debbie Ford, and this one came out in July of 2020. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 34 stitches and 48 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 1, which corresponds to a 2.25 millimeter needle, and it comes in 3 different sizes. There is a lace pattern on the front of the foot that comes both written and charted in the pattern. And I also wanted to read the designer's description and inspiration on the Ravelry project page to you. She says, "Inspired by my favorite flowers, this pattern is a relaxing and intuitive knit. These socks are worked top down. The pattern includes instructions for a heel flap and gusset, a modified wedge toe, and how to work these in a contrast yarn, which is of course optional." And the next pattern that I would like to show you is called Business Casual by Tanis Lavallee. This pattern came out in December of 2011 and is knitted with a fingering weight yarn and a gauge of 28 stitches and 40 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 1.5, which corresponds to 2.5 millimeters, and the design comes in 2 different sizes. The designer states that this pair of socks was designed for her dad, and that with this preppy faux argyle design you could take the socks from the office all the way to the weekend. The next pair of socks that I would like to show you is called Fairy Maiden by Olivia from This Handmade Live. This pattern came out in March of 2020 and is knitted with a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 36 stitches over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 1.5, which corresponds to 2.5 millimeters, and it comes in 1 size. The design is knitted from the cuff down and has a lacy and simple cable texture. The designer states that the pattern is easy to memorize, but it only comes charted. It contains a traditional heel flap and gusset and a wedge toe. Now the pattern is written for only 1 size, but the designer states that you can easily adjust the width of the sock by simply going up or down needle sizes, and what you could also do is increase or decrease the number of purl stitches in between the lace motifs. Now, Olivia has more than 70 different sock knitting patterns in her portfolio, and you should definitely check her out if you haven't done so already. but I wanted to show you just one more of her beautiful designs just because it's way too pretty not to. And the second pattern that I have picked out is called Wood Nymph. And this one was released in December of 2017. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn as well, with a gauge of 36 stitches and 48 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 1.5, which corresponds to 2.5 millimeters, and it also comes in one size. She states that she was inspired by the wood nymphs, which are magical beings that live in the forests and woodlands. This sock pattern incorporates a lovely lace stitch inspired by such creatures. This sleeve lace stitch is knit on either side of the socks, and it comes in the form of a chart. The next sock pattern that I would like to show you is called Source Mean, and it is a design by Rachel Sugord. I hope that's how you pronounce her name. This one was published by Filcolana, so the yarn company, and it is knitted in their sock yarn base called Filcolana Arwetta, and it came out in August of 2021. The yarn is a light fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 32 stitches and 44 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 1.5, which corresponds to a 2.5 millimeter needle, and it comes in 4 different sizes. The socks are decorated with a small faux cable and a slip stitch on the sides, and they also have an easy knit and purl pattern that's running down the front of the foot. And the designer states that this design was inspired by these traditional Genzi sweaters that fishermen used to wear. Next up is a pattern called Laid Edges by Kelly McPherson, and it came out in March of 2020. It is knitted with a DK weight yarn with a gauge of 28 stitches and 38 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 2.5, which corresponds to 3 millimeters. It comes in 3 different sizes. And there is this beautiful simple cable motif that is running down the sides of the otherwise simple stockinette sock. And the designer states on the Ravelry page that she even has a video tutorial that shows you how to do this cable stitch, and that's on her Instagram page, which I'm going to link for you in the description box. Next up is a pattern called Kevan Korvala by Daria Virankari. I hope that's correct. And the name of the pattern, it's a Finnish name, and translated into English, it means in the ear of spring. This design is knitted with a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 29 stitches over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 1, which corresponds to a 2.25 millimeter needle, and it comes in 3 different sizes. These socks are knitted from the cuff down and contain a French heel, and the stitch pattern looks like a simple combination of knits and purls that create this very interesting stitch texture. Next up is a bit of a holiday inspired sock, but it is never too early to start knitting for Christmas, isn't it? So this one is called Holly Christmas Socks by Knit and Wave, and it came out in November of 2024. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 32 stitches and 42 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 1 and a US 1.5 that corresponds to 2.25 and 2.5 millimeters, and it comes in 4 different sizes. Now the designer states that this is more of a recipe than a concrete pattern, and that you could simply use your favorite stockinette sock knitting pattern and then just add her colorwork motif on top of it. And she was inspired by a Christmas sweater that she was knitting, and since she wanted to create a matching pair of socks and couldn't find anything, she decided to create her own pattern for it. And I'm not sure if this is the pattern that she was knitting on, but to me this colorwork motif looks a lot like the sweater from Pernille Larsen from Knitting for Olive, which is called the Holly sweater. So this might have been her inspiration for this pair of socks, I'm not sure. Next up is a design called Fioriti Socks by Lisa Schmidt, and it came out in January of 2025. It is knitted with a light fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 30 stitches and 40 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used are a US 1.5, which corresponds to 2.5 millimeters, and it comes in 3 different sizes. This has a beautiful all-over lace motif, and the socks are knitted from the cuff down and feature a German short row heel. The pattern comes charted, but the designer states that there are also some written instructions within the pattern. Next up is a design called the Speckled Space Socks by Amanda Stevens, and it came out in July of 2016. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 32 stitches and 44 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size is a US 1.5, which corresponds to 2.5 millimeters, and it comes in 3 different sizes. The designer states that she was inspired by the speckled and variegated yarns of her favorite hand dyers, but she was often wondering what to do with these beautiful skeins of yarns, and that's why she created her own design. And the Speckled Space socks feature an easy textured pattern with some chevron shaping to add interest and minimal purling for speed. This is a toe-up sock pattern with gusset and creases and a heel flap, but of course you could substitute for any heel of your liking, and you could also easily transfer the pattern to be a top-down knitting format if that's what you prefer. Next up is a very cute design called the Biscuit Socks by Fluffy Fibers, who is Isabelle. And this design came out in November of 2020. It is knitted with a DK weight yarn with a gauge of 24 stitches over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needles used are a US 2.5 and a US 4, which corresponds to 3 and 3.5 millimeters, and it comes in 2 different sizes. The socks are knitted from the cuff down, contain a Dutch heel and a star toe. And the pattern comes with 2 separate sets of instructions, one for double pointed needles and one for circular needles. This design reminds me a lot of one of my favorite sock knitting patterns, which is called the Hermione's Everyday Socks by Erika Lüder. This is also a free pattern, but it is written for fingering weight yarn. So I think it's perfect that Isabelle created a pattern for a DK weight yarn, but the knit pearl texture in both patterns looks very similar to me. The next pattern that I have picked out to show you is called The Wind in the Oak Tree by Anna McKilla, and it came out in January of 2024. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 32 stitches and 44 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 1, which corresponds to 2.25 millimeters, and it comes in 1 size. These socks are knitted from the top down, and they contain stranded colorwork on the cuff and on the foot just before the toe. And there's also cabling on both the cuff and the rest of the sock. The next pattern that I would like to show you is called the Mountain Ash Socks by Shui Wu. I hope that's how you say her name. She is from Canada, but I think this is a Chinese name. And she's also known as Cow from Mars. The pattern came out in December of 2023 and is knitted with a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 24 stitches and 44 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 1.5, which corresponds to 2.5 millimeters, and it comes in 2 different sizes. This is a beautiful cable and lace pattern that is knitted from the cuff down and contains a heel flap and gusset construction, but most of the pattern is charted only. And there you have it, 15 stunning sock knitting patterns that are available completely for free. The first knitting pattern that I would like to show you is called Ease Fuel by Trine Knitwear. It was published in January of 2025, and the name of the design comes from the Danish word for the common kingfisher. The yarn that was used for the sample is filcolana. She used the Vilja, which is a 100% alpaca yarn, held together with filcolana tilia, which is a silk mohair blend. If you plan to wear this design in the summer months, I would recommend that you substitute this yarn combination for a bit of a lighter yarn blend, for example, a cotton linen blend. So you have this lace weight yarn and a fingering weight yarn held together to create a gauge of 19 stitches and 27 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needles that she used are a US 6 and a US 8, which correspond to 4 and 5 millimeter needles. You will also need a crochet hook with a size of 4 millimeters that corresponds to a size G. The design comes in 6 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 32.25 up to 48 inches or 82 up to 122 centimeters. Unfortunately, there is no information about the recommended ease. Ease twill is knitted in the round from the top down with contiguous sleeves. First, the neckline is worked in reverse stockinette, and then the stitches are divided and short rows are worked back and forth across the back neck stitches. At the same time, the saddle shoulder construction is shaped with increases, and once the full shoulder width is reached, increases are made across all shoulder stitches, creating the puff at the top of the sleeves. The body is knitted with waist shaping and finished with a ribbed edge, that is ending with a rolled edge in reverse stockinette stitch. Next up is a summer vest or a summer top maybe, and it is called the Easter Slipover by Stine Holgard Jönsson. This design was published by the Swedish yarn company Järbo, and the name of the design comes from the Swedish verb of making cheese. It came out in February of 2022 and was knitted with a yarn from the yarn company, so Järbo, and the base is called Colin, which is a cotton linen blend with a gauge of 23 stitches and 32 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 1.5 and a US 4, which correspond to 2.5 and 3.5 millimeter needles. The design comes in 8 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 33.5 up to 55.25 inches or 85 up to 140 centimeters. Unfortunately, there is no information about the recommended ease in the pattern. The vest is knitted from the bottom up and has this decorative lace pattern on the front. The next pattern that I wanted to show you is called Anja, and it is a design by Comfort Zone Knits. It came out in August of 2019 and is knitted with a rayon linen blend. The gauge comes out to 22 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 2.5, 3 and 4, which corresponds to 3 millimeter, 3.25 millimeter and 3.5 millimeters. It comes in 6 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 36.5 up to 56 inches or 91 up to 140 centimeters. The recommended ease is 6 to 10 inches, which corresponds to 15 to 25 centimeters. Anja is a simple and casual tee that is knitted from the top down using the contiguous method. After casting on, you'll be increasing stitches for the front and the back, and when all increases are completed, the top is worked first back and forth, so the front and the back separately until you reach the underarm, and then you join in the round and knit all the way down to the twisted ribbing. And the next design that I have picked out to show you is called Midsommarkrans, a sleeveless top by Lene Tosti. I think this is a very ethereal and romantic design. I absolutely adore the photography that was done here. This design came out in February of 2023 and it is again published by the Swedish yarn company Järbo, and it uses the same yarn that we previously had a look at for the other pattern, so the Colin, which is a sport weight yarn and a blend of cotton and linen with a gauge of 24 stitches and 34 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 2.5 and a US 1.5. That corresponds to 3 and 2.5 millimeter needles. This one is available in 16 different sizes, so extremely size inclusive, and some of those even are double sizes. So the range is from double extra small to 5XL, and the finished bust measurements range from 29.5 up to 59 inches or 75 up to 150 centimeters. The recommended ease is 0 inches or centimeters. So this top features a wreath of leaves around the neckline and is knitted seamlessly from the top down. The top is shaped the same way on the front and the back, so you can wear either side on the front. And the instructions include 3 different options to shape the body. Next up is a pattern called Circes by Marie-Amélie Designs. It came out in June of 2021 and is knitted with a merino silk blend with a gauge of 25 stitches and 34 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 2.5 and a US 4, which corresponds to 3 and 3.5 millimeters. It comes in 10 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 34.75 up to 63 inches or 88 up to 160 centimeters. The recommended ease is 2 to 4.75 inches or 5 to 12 centimeters. Circes is a top-down pullover that plays with a raglan construction to create a lace pattern that covers the sleeves and adorns the sides of the pullover. 3 different sleeve length options are available, so you can choose the style that fits you most. And there is one more design by Marie-Amélie Designs that I wanted to show you because it is just too beautiful not to. This one is called Linearis and it came out in July of 2021. The sample was knitted with De Rerum Natura Antigone, which is a 100% linen yarn in a sport weight with a gauge of 21 stitches and 32 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle she used is a US 2.5, which corresponds to 3 millimeters. There is no information about the number of sizes that are available. She states that the top is worked using a combination of a front and back width for a perfect fit. The finished bust measurements range for the front width from 17.75 up to 34 inches, that corresponds to 45 up to 86 centimeters, and for the back width they range from 17 up to 26.75 inches or 43 up to 68 centimeters. The recommended ease is 0.75 inches or 2 centimeters of negative ease up to 1.25 inches or 3 centimeters of positive ease. Linearis is a summer top with a deep V-neck at both the front and the back. It is worked in the round from the bottom up until the underarms, and then you split for the front and back and knit flat, ending in straps that are either joined using a 3-needle bind-off, continued as sleeve-shaped ties, or worked as a combination of the two. Next up is the Sarah top by Novita. So this one was published by Novita but is actually a design by Sari Nordlund. It came out in March of 2020 and it uses the Novita wool cotton, which is a merino cotton blend and a DK weight and a gauge of 20 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size is a US 6, which corresponds to 4 millimeters. The design comes in 6 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 31.5 up to 47.25 inches or 80 up to 120 centimeters. There is no information about the recommended ease. The top is worked seamlessly from the hem to the armholes. It is symmetrical, so you can choose whether you want the buttons on the front or in the back. The next design that I would like to show you is called Scheer by Audrey Borrego, and it came out in August of 2020. She used the BC Garn Bio Balance to knit her sample, which is a blend of cotton and merino, and it is a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 24 stitches and 34 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 2 and a US 3, which correspond to 2.75 and 3.25 millimeters. The design comes in 7 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 36.25 up to 67.75 inches or 92 up to 172 centimeters. The recommended ease is 15 to 20 centimeters, which corresponds to 6 to 7.75 inches. This is a tee with a graphic lace all over the back. The body is knitted in the round from the bottom up until the armholes. The front and back are then separated and knitted flat, continuing the lace motif on the back and shaping a low scoop neckline on the front. The shoulders are joined with a 3-needle bind-off and the stitches are picked up along the armholes and neckline to finish them in a large ribbing pattern. Next up is the April top by Luciana Lopez, and this one came out in March of 2022, and she used the Manos del Uruguay Serena yarn, which is a sport weight alpaca cotton blend with a gauge of 24 stitches over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 1, which corresponds to a 2.25 millimeter needle. This pattern comes in 7 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 34.5 up to 59 inches or 88 up to 149.5 centimeters. There is unfortunately no information about the recommended ease, but it is stated in the pattern that the model is wearing the top with no positive ease. This sleeveless top is the perfect knit for warm summer days according to the designer. It is knitted from the bottom up, and the yarn that she used, so this blend of alpaca and cotton, is very light and drapey. And the top also has the appeal of this simple yet interesting geometric knit and purl texture and also contains a split hem. Next up is a pattern that has been in my favorites for the longest time, and it is a pattern by Pearl Soho called the Circular Yoke Summer Shirt, and it came out in May of 2017 and is knitted with a 100% silk yarn, so Pearl Soho's silk yarn, and the base is called Cattail Silk. And this is a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 28 stitches and 36 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needles are a US 3, which corresponds to a 3.25 millimeters. The design comes in 9 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 34.75 up to 66.75 inches or 88.25 up to 169.5 centimeters. The recommended ease is 1.75 up to 3.75 inches or 4.5 up to 9.5 centimeters of positive ease. I really like this design because it is simple yet beautiful. It is knitted from the bottom up. You have some gentle waist shaping and also those decorative yoke decreases. Another very beautiful design that I would like to show you is the Simple Summer Tank by Caitlin Barthold from Originally Lovely. Now you can either purchase this pattern on Ravelry or you can get it completely for free on her website, but there you will have to deal with the ads. This design came out in July of 2021. And she used a Lion brand yarn to knit it. She used the Comfy Cotton Blend, which is a DK weight yarn of a cotton and polyester blend with a gauge of 18 stitches and 24 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needles used are a US 7 and a US 8, which correspond to 4.5 and 5 millimeter needles. This design comes in 9 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 28 up to 60 inches or 71 up to 152.5 centimeters. The recommended ease is 0 to 4 inches or 0 to 10 centimeters of negative ease. The model is wearing the top with 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters of negative ease. It is constructed from the top down. First you shape the neckline and the straps, and then you separate to increase more at the front and back body panels, and finally you will join the body panels to work the body of the top in the round. And one more design that I would like to show you is called the Vattenlilja top by Inga Semmingsen. This came out in February of 2021 and was also published by the Swedish yarn company Järbo, and is knitted with one of their yarns, a DK weight linen yarn called Lin, with a gauge of 19 stitches and 24 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needles used are a US 1.5 and a US 2.5, which corresponds to 2.5 and 3 millimeters. This design comes in 7 different sizes, but 2 of those are double sizes. The finished bust measurements range from 32.25 inches up to 64.5 inches, or 82 up to 164 centimeters. Unfortunately, there is no information about the recommended ease. The Vattenlilja top is a cool summertime cropped t-shirt with decorative details, cables along the raglan increases, stranded colorwork on the lower part of the body, and a line of red stitches above the ribbing. And it is stated in the pattern that this is a design that's equally fine for everyday and parties. I hope you found some inspiration in this big collection of patterns. Whether you are planning your next sweater knit, are looking for some cozy socks, or just a simple project to relax with, I would love to hear what caught your eye. Please let me know in the comments. And if you would like to get even more knitting pattern inspiration, I'm going to link a couple of videos and resources for you in the description box. Thank you for spending this cozy time with me today, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!